Thank you, and welcome to Mental Health Through Mental Science. I'm going to speak now on why change usually requires suffering. Probably one of the most beautiful sights there is to watch is a small child. Now, I mean small, I don't mean physically, but I mean young. While he's still in that area of his life, before his mind has become conditioned to what the race in general and his own society in particular subscribe to, the beliefs of the people around him. At this point in his life, his mind is clear, clean, pure, unencumbered by past experiences, by fixed ideas, by conclusions concerning life that may or may not be accurate. He is functioning with an efficiency and a perfection and a pure love of life that probably in this experience he will never know completely again. Later on in his experience, he'll struggle and search and strain to try to recapture some of those attitudes. And I'm sure that this must have been what the Christian master had in mind when he said, if you would enter the kingdom of heaven, you must be as a little child. Not childish, as an awful lot of us are too often, but childlike. Childlike in the attitude of mind with which we approach life. The young person, that is, I'm not sure just what ages this would be. It would vary some in individuals, but at the outside of his experience, the young person has so many beautiful attitudes that adults can certainly envy. A young person always knows exactly what he wants. At any time, you can ask him what he wants, and he will tell you. Now, 40 years later, that same mind will be fumbling and groping and justifying and evading the question, what do I want in life? But at this stage of his experience, and we all have this area of our lives clearly established in our memory. We were all there once. We all knew at one time what it was like to always know exactly what we wanted. We may have lost it to a great degree now. Some of us may have recaptured it to some degree, but never quite like it once was. Ask a young person why he's doing what he's doing, and he will always give you the same answer, because I want to. Because at this age, he doesn't believe in doing things that he doesn't want to do. He is motivated by the only honest, real, true desire there is, true motive that there is, and that is his own desire. This is all that motivates him. Ask him why he desires to do it, and again, all children unanimously will come up with the same answer, because it's fun. So he always knows what he wants, and he always does what he wants out of a love of doing it because it is fun. What a beautiful attitude to approach life. And yet we in the adult world presume to go to this mind and tell it how to approach life. We should be going to that mind and asking it to tell us how to recapture that attitude so that we can again know how to approach life. But things aren't quite that simple. We all succumb to the conditioning of the thinking around us. We become conditioned to the world's ideas, to the dominant adults in our lives, in our early years. Probably the most unfortunate thing is that the people who are responsible for handing their ideas down to the next generation are always people who love the young person and who are sincerely trying to do their best. Unfortunately, they are unaware that it's possible to be sincerely wrong. No matter how sincere you are, or no matter how good a rower you are, it is possible to sincerely row your boat in the wrong direction. So we attach an extra amount of importance to being sincere and loving, and we get confused semantically on the difference between care and fear, wisdom and fear. And so we begin to caution the young person and teach them how to be afraid like we are. We don't call it fear. We don't say, now I'm going to indoctrinate you in fear today with this lesson. We will go feeling that we're doing the loving, kind thing for the young person, and then scare them in the name of wisdom. We will tell them what we believe about life. We will not tell them about life because at this point in our development, we're not really usually that clear on what it is ourselves, and probably should be learning from them rather than trying to teach them. Now, I'm not speaking of they, the young people, as though they are something other than what we are. This applies to all people. We all went through this phase, and we all go through the adult phase. It is the adult that needs to do the learning. It is the adult that needs to learn how to deal with the young person and himself as a human being, instead of a conditioned machine that is simply a complex collection of a bunch of mechanical reactions to what is happening about him, and is no longer the pleasant, loving, initiating, confident, expressing human being that he was when he was 4 or 5 years old, when he always knew what he wanted and never did anything except what he wanted and did it because it was fun. He didn't know any other motivation. He didn't know how to motivate himself for $1 or how to make himself completely and utterly dishonest in order to impress another human being so that he would be accepted. But he got conditioned along the way, as we all did, and he came to believe through the conditioning that if he didn't do this and that and the other, that people wouldn't like him. There probably is no intimidation greater than that. There is no fear greater than that. We fear physical harm, that is true. But I think if those things could be measured, we would realize very clearly that we fear a spiritual death a lot more than we fear a physical death. That we fear being rejected by the society we live in a lot more than we fear damaging our bodies or of anything harmful at a physical level happening to us. So the great whip in training the behavior of the young person is that if you don't do it this way, people won't like you. Or if you insist on behaving like that, people will not like you. Everybody has a need to be liked. The child responds naturally to the intimidation because he is afraid of losing all of his friends. He doesn't want to lose his friends, so his mind immediately calculates and says, fine, what is it that you want me to be? I will try to be it if I can. If I can't, then I'll have to find and develop some defense within myself to cope with the fact that people are not going to like me, which means that I will have to protect myself eventually from the emotional hurt that goes with that possibility, and the usual way of doing that is to not like people, and usually not like them in advance so that you can't feel the hurt that you're suffering underneath. This conditioning is put down by loving people very sincerely and with the greatest intimidation that it's possible to intimidate a human being with: the fear of being rejected by the society that he lives in. So we then grow into our adulthood trying to be that which somebody else has taught us to be, believing all the while that it is an essential to become that, or else we're not going to be acceptable. So we either try our best to become it in a pretending sort of a way, because we have to manipulate in order to do this. We can't do it really. Or we have to defy everybody and the society and claim that we don't care. In one way or another, we either feel we have to do it, or we feel we ought to do it, and we feel guilty if we don't. Then from that point on, we make a game out of trying to convince everybody that we are what we think they think we ought to be. We dedicate ourselves to this, feeling that our security and our very existence is tied to it, and that it is a condition of that existence, because we know intuitively underneath that we can't survive without being integrated in the society we live in any more than the drop of ocean water can survive outside of the ocean. In the ocean, it's part of eternity. Outside of it, it cannot exist isolated, and neither can we. So we succumb to this, and then spend the rest of our lives dedicated to a goal that is an absolute psychological impossibility, trying to be what we think other people think we ought to be. The whole thing is a phantom. We chase it into adulthood, and many of us chase it on past the death certificate and into our next experience. Once in a while, there are those among us who become fortunate enough to discover the error of this concept and then begin to recondition ourselves. But the reconditioning is very difficult, and we usually have to hurt financially, physically, and certainly emotionally to a great extent before we can even be motivated to want to surrender this false concept of what we should be. We cannot do it at first from inspiration because we have our security and our very survival tied to it. That is, according to our belief. And it takes some doing, and usually a lot of suffering, before we're able to recognize that it is our belief that is in error. This is difficult to recognize and difficult to change because it goes contrary to what everybody else believes.